The first time I met Susan Caldwell, she wielded a clipboard like a sword and eyed my work boots as if I'd tramped dirt across her marble countertops. "You can't just build whatever you please out here, sir," she said, her gaze sharpening. "I'm Ethan Morrow," I replied, keeping my hands in my pockets. "That cabin's on my land." She didn't flinch. "This is Cedar Grove Estates. We have standards, guidelines, visual harmony." She air-quoted cabin like it was a personal insult. "It looks like a fishing shack." "It's a log cabin," I said, steady but firm. "Built to code, permitted, on private land my family's owned since the 50s. I just restored it." Susan's lips pursed like she'd bitten into a grapefruit. "I'm president of the HOA, and we weren't consulted. You'll hear from us." I already had. 2 weeks prior, the first of many violation notices arrived. Unapproved structure, non-compliant materials, unauthorized exterior color. The absurdity? My cabin sat on a quiet 2 acres outside the main subdivision, beyond the HOA's reach. But that didn't stop them. I figured it was just noise until I left for a 3-day trip to visit my sister in Portland. When I returned, the cabin was gone. Nothing remained but a scarred patch of earth and a few splintered boards. I stood there, stunned, for a solid 10 minutes before driving to the sheriff's office. Deputy Malone gaped at me like I'd reported a UFO landing. "You're saying someone demolished your entire cabin?" "Yeah," I said. "And I've got a hunch who." The next morning, I crashed the HOA meeting. Susan presided at the head of the clubhouse table, sipping from a mug emblazoned with Queen Bee. Her auburn pixie cut was razor-sharp, her smile as artificial as a showroom sofa. Well, she said, spotting me. "Look who's gracing us with his presence. You tore down my cabin." Gasps rippled through the room. A few board members squirmed. Susan didn't blink. "We removed an illegal structure." I dropped a folder on the table. That illegal structure was fully permitted, county-stamped, surveyed, zoned. "You had no authority." She flicked her eyes at the papers, unimpressed. "We sent warnings." "You sent harassment," I said. "You broke onto private property and committed felony destruction." She rolled her eyes. "Let's not be theatrical." "I'm not," I said. "The sheriff's been notified, and the county clerk's already reviewed my documents because I work for the county recorder's office. I process property records for a living. Every permit, deed, and plat map for this area, I've signed off on them." "You picked the wrong guy." Susan's eyes flicked to the folder, but her voice held steady. "You can't expect us to track every parcel around the development. Errors happen." "You didn't make an error," I said. "You hired a demolition crew, bypassed a locked gate, and raised a permitted structure without a court order. That's criminal trespass and destruction of property." The room fell silent. Even the guy with the smartwatch and fake tan stopped fiddling with his screen. Susan leaned back, as if trying to melt into her chair. A man at the table's end coughed. "Susan, did you authorize that demolition without consulting the board?" "Don't be absurd, Mark," she snapped. "We discussed it in executive session." "That was about mailbox violations," Mark said. "Not this." Susan's jaw clenched. "I acted for the association's benefit." "You acted without a vote," another board member said, "and without verifying the property lines." I didn't wait for their debate to unfold. I walked out, already calling my attorney. By morning, Deputy Malone was back on my driveway with an investigator from the county DA's office, a woman named Laura. I handed over my documentation, permits, surveys, plat maps, and a certified letter I'd sent the HOA 6 months earlier, stating my land was outside their jurisdiction. Laura skimmed the papers with a seasoned eye. "You weren't kidding about working in records. This is airtight." "I knew they'd try something," I said. "I didn't expect this." Laura nodded. "If they hired that crew without a court order or legal claim to the land, it's not just trespassing, it's conspiracy." Malone glanced over. "We talked to the contractor. Says Susan signed the work order herself, claimed it was HOA common land, and the cabin was a hazard." Laura raised an eyebrow. "Did he verify the tax parcel?" "He didn't even check the address," Malone said. That afternoon, I drove to the contractor's office, a low brick building with a weathered sign. Peak Pulse Demo and Grading. Inside, the owner, a stocky man in his 60s named Carl, looked like he'd been expecting me. "I didn't know it was yours," he said before I could speak. "I wouldn't have touched it if I'd known." I slapped the real survey on his desk. This is the parcel line. That cabin was 150 feet outside HOA territory. You demolished a private residence. That's a felony. Carl rubbed his temples. I'll cooperate with the investigation. I've got the work order, emails, everything. I'll turn it over. You'd better, I said, because the DA's already building a case. 3 days later, Susan was served a subpoena. Laura called to confirm the grand jury was opening a file. We're looking at charges for unlawful entry, destruction of property, and falsifying documents, she said. If we prove she used forged materials to authorize the demolition, it opens up more charges. Meanwhile, I filed a civil suit. My attorney, a meticulous man named Victor with a knack for legal chess, filed for punitive damages, restitution, and injunctive relief, plus a restraining order barring the HOA from my land. 2 weeks later, Susan resigned. No speech, just a typed note on the clubhouse door citing personal reasons. But the truth spilled out. When the board saw the demolition order complete with a forged site map and her sole signature, they panicked. Mark called me. Ethan, on behalf of the board. I don't want apologies, I said. I want accountability. Cooperate with the investigation and hold a public meeting. Tell the community what happened. No spin. To my surprise, they did. The clubhouse was packed. Residents filled every seat, some standing, others furious. Susan didn't show, but the board sat like scolded students. Mark read a statement admitting Susan acted alone, the cabin was legal, and the HOA had no jurisdiction. He apologized for their oversight and vowed to support the investigation. Hands shot up. Are we liable for her actions? What about our dues if we're sued? Can the HOA even function if it doesn't know its boundaries? I stood in the back, silent, watching the unraveling. That night, Victor called. The DA filed formal charges: criminal mischief, trespass, forgery, abuse of authority. They're also subpoenaing HOA financials. Why the financials? Susan used association funds to pay the demo crew. That's misappropriation. If she faked a vote to release the money, it's embezzlement. By month's end, Susan was indicted. Her mugshot hit the local paper under HOA president charged in illegal demolition. Carl, the contractor, got immunity for turning over every document, email, and invoice. Turns out, Susan had also tried to cite a neighboring property for unauthorized fencing despite it being outside HOA limits. Her obsession with control had imploded. The board held emergency elections. 3 members resigned, 2 were voted out. The new president, a pragmatic woman named Ellen who'd worked as a municipal auditor, ordered a full audit of HOA activity for the past 5 years. I rebuilt the cabin stronger, with a deeper foundation, thicker beams, and a wide porch. I didn't ask permission. I didn't need to. I also installed cameras motion-activated, night vision, cloud backup covering every inch of my property. Trust is earned, and Cedar Grove Estates had a long way to go. A month after the indictment, the courthouse buzzed for Susan's arraignment. I didn't attend. Victor went, sitting quietly in the second row. Susan's lawyer pushed for dismissal, but the judge shut it down mid-sentence. The real storm, though, was in Cedar Grove. With Susan gone and the board reshuffled, the neighborhood teetered between reform and chaos. Ellen moved fast, reviewing every enforcement action from Susan's tenure citations, fines, denials for everything from shed colors to tree heights. One Thursday, as I bolted the final baluster on my rebuilt staircase, a woman knocked. She wore a navy jacket with the county seal and a badge. Investigator Torres, Public Integrity Bureau. Got a minute? I wiped sawdust off my hands and let her in. She didn't sit. We're investigating a pattern of misconduct, she said, setting a recorder on the table. We think Susan used her position to funnel HOA funds into private accounts and target residents she deemed uncooperative. I raised an eyebrow. Embezzling. Torres nodded. And weaponizing HOA authority. We've confirmed she routed duplicate invoices through a shell gardening company registered to her brother-in-law. Payments were disguised as maintenance for fake common areas. I crossed my arms. No one noticed until now. She kept amounts below reporting thresholds and spread them across budget lines. But the financials from the last 4 years lit up like a flare gun. Torres paused. You're the complainant in the demolition case, and we found emails where Susan called you a problem resident and threat to order. That shows intent. I pointed to my desk. I've got every letter she sent, emails, and photos from before and after the demo. Torres handed me a flash drive. Can you provide digital copies? We're building a timeline. I burned her a copy while she glanced at a framed photo of my dad outside the original cabin, axe in hand. When she left, I called Victor. She's not going down for one crime. They're building a whole book. She's in deep, he said. 3 ex-board members say she rigged votes and threatened residents with fines unless they backed her. That afternoon, a neighbor I'd never met, Clara Nguyen, a retired chemist from the Hilltop lots, showed up. Thank you, she said, her voice firm but weary. Susan blocked my greenhouse permit for 4 years, said it clashed with the landscape aesthetic. I nodded. Sounds like her. She threatened to fine me for excessive plant height after I put up a trellis. Clara paused. Is there a class action? Victor's organizing it, I said. Anyone hit with financial loss or property interference under Susan's reign can join. Clara's eyes softened. I'm in. She cost me thousands, and I've got every rejection letter saved. Word spread. By week's end, Victor had 38 residents signed on. Some were fined for native plant gardens. One man, a firefighter, faced lien threats over a $90 dues payment missed during a wildfire deployment. Victor added a second lawyer to handle the volume. The goal wasn't just compensation, it was dismantling the system that let Susan run unchecked. With the DA eyeing conspiracy charges, we had leverage. The HOA's insurance company panicked. Blindsided by the demolition claim, they now faced massive liability. They sent a risk attorney to negotiate a private settlement. Victor and I met them in a sterile downtown office. Their rep, a polished woman, tried a soft pitch. Mr. Morrow, litigation is costly, time-consuming, stressful. Why not settle quietly? Victor didn't blink. You demolished a legal residence with no authority, using HOA funds under an indicted president. Quiet's not an option. She sighed. Your terms. Victor slid over a document. Full reconstruction costs, triple damages, HOA policy overhaul with independent oversight, and a public admission of fault. She balked at the press release. That could hurt property values. So could fraud, conspiracy, and illegal demolition, Victor said. 2 days later, the HOA signed. The insurer cut a check, and every resident got a mailbox flyer admitting the wrongdoing. A week after, Ellen held a town hall. The clubhouse overflowed, but the mood had shifted. Anger had become resolve. Committees formed to rewrite bylaws. Elections were set for open seats, and Ellen visited my land, not to cite me, but to apologize. We've got work to do, she said, standing at my porch steps. It starts with owning this. I nodded. You're on the right path. The final blow landed 3 weeks later. Susan's trial date was set, and the DA added witness tampering to her charges. Texted 2 ex-board members, urging them to stick to the story about the demolition. They handed over the messages. Her lawyer pushed for a plea, and the DA offered one. 18 months in prison, full restitution, a public apology in the county paper, and a lifetime ban from HOA or public board roles. She took it. The apology ran on a Sunday, and word spread like wildfire. For months, Cedar Grove realtors had to reassure buyers the HOA was reformed, but Susan Caldwell's name became a local warning. I settled onto my rebuilt porch with coffee, watching mist weave through the pines. The cabin stood stronger, new foundation, sturdier beams, a porch built for mornings like this. No survey checks, no drone paranoia. Justice came slow, with paper trails, court orders, and a community that finally stood up. Susan? She's reading boundary lines from a smaller house now, no clipboard in sight. Winter brought new scaffolding as I finished the cabin's interior. Then came a call from the Public Integrity Bureau, not just Torres, but Assistant DA Rachel Kim, her tone crisp. We've widened the investigation. It's not just Susan. There's evidence she colluded with a former zoning officer, Nathan Bryce. I set down a chisel. Bryce. He approved forged boundary documents to justify your cabin's demolition, Kim said. His stamps on the fake maps Susan submitted, backdated 8 months. My jaw tightened. So she had an inside man. We're issuing a warrant for Bryce's arrest. It's a corruption case now, falsifying records, fraud, conspiracy to commit unlawful demolition. By the next week, Bryce was arrested. The news hit hard, and the Public Integrity Bureau held a press conference outside the courthouse. I watched from my kitchen, screwing in cabinet hinges. Kim stood at the podium, flanked by officials. These charges reflect a breach of public trust. No one is above the law. Cedar Grove felt the shockwave. Ellen called an emergency meeting, not in the clubhouse, but at the community green. Residents brought camp chairs and coffee mugs, the air heavy with realization. Susan's actions weren't solo, Ellen said, holding a report. She worked with external parties to manipulate boundaries, siphon funds, and authorize demolitions under false pretenses. Clara, standing up front, asked, "How many properties were hit?" 6, Ellen replied. 3 got baseless citations. 1 owner was pressured to sell under fine threats. Ethan's cabin was destroyed, and another faced fake landscaping violations. I stayed in the back, arms crossed, watching the community grapple with the scope. A new board member, Tim, added, "We found an unauthorized dues hike last year, funneled to a reserve account Susan controlled. It was never reported." A man in the crowd muttered, "She robbed us blind." Ellen didn't soften it. She did. "We're working with the DA to recover every penny." The HOA launched a restitution program, reimbursing fraudulent fines and fast-tracking denied permits. They voted for annual external audits. Victor pushed the civil suit, now with Bryce's involvement confirmed, tying the forged documents to the demolition. We amended the suit to include the county for negligent oversight. They settled quietly, covering reconstruction, legal fees, redesign costs, lost time, and property value impacts. By spring, the cabin was complete roof sealed, wood stove humming. The porch became my refuge. Then came a certified letter, county seal gleaming. The investigation was closed. Susan's plea deal held 18 months, restitution, apology, lifetime ban. Bryce faced trial, convicted in under 5 hours, 7 years for falsifying records and conspiracy. He lost his pension and credentials. The HOA transformed. Ellen and the board rewrote the bylaws, adding transparency clauses, public voting for enforcement, and an independent resident review panel. One evening, Ellen stopped by with a folder. "We're renaming the community green," she said. "Time for a name that fits the new chapter." I raised an eyebrow. "What's it called?" She handed me a resolution, Morrow Pines Green. I blinked. "You didn't need to." "We did," she said. "You stood up when no one else could. You didn't fold, and you forced us to be better." I looked past her to the cedars swaying in the dusk, the cabin's lights warm behind us. The weight in my chest was gone. "I appreciate it," I said. "Just make sure the next guy building out here doesn't need a war to be treated right." Ellen's smile was genuine. "We're on it." She left, and I filed the resolution next to the original deed, signed by my dad in 1954. The cabin had fallen and risen, not just a building but a boundary, legal, physical, unyielding. No clipboard, no fake map, no power-hungry president would cross it again.